We're live.
We're live.
All right, we're live at the Future of Supply Chain
In Atlanta.
in Atlanta.
We made it.
Tony Mulvey, Zach Strickland, and we're joined by a third member of the Freightonomics team now for today, Dustin Vach, Senior Manager of Fleet Strategy and Sustainability at Univar Solutions, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. You enjoying the conference so far?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So many smart people in one room. You know, hard to find that.
Yeah. So, Head of Freight Market Intelligence.
Senior Analyst, Economics and Transportation.
There you go. And, you know, normally we talk about a lot of the economic and freight market dynamics and things like that. But Dustin, today we're going to ask you some questions, obviously, about just your experience, you know, some real world, some people with their boots on the ground.
Yeah, great.
Because we're a show for the people,
Yes.
Tony. And, you know, Dustin, you came from, your previous company, you were more of on the general commodity side, and you transition into the bulk side, the tank side.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people understand the dynamics there between, what is, a truck's a truck. And you know that's not really
Yeah.
what it is.
I had an old boss that used to explain to me that freight's not complicated. You pick it up from A, you deliver it to B, you get the customer to pay. And maybe true in the dry-van side. I'd say there's a little bit more complexity to that. But on the bulk side, it's a completely different animal. Yeah, you're 100% right there.
Yeah. So the freight market itself tends to be it's a little loose, a little soft, a little oversupplied. But that doesn't necessarily. All those dynamics don't obviously play out in every single niche or sector. What has been your biggest? I guess what's been the biggest surprise thing that you found transitioning into the bulk commodity world?
Just how much variance there has to be on the equipment side. In dry-van space, you might have a vented van from time to time, or need a heater, but the sheer variance to deliver one chemical versus another is not just the barrel construction,
right,
but the liner that's inside of it, the color of the hose to make sure that matches the right tank, because small errors aren't just, hey, we blew a tire. It's, hey, we blew up a building.
Right. And
we try not to do that. And, fortunately, we've got incredible people in the background that build out those redundancies that ensure that can't happen. And our drivers really are the brainchild behind it all. They're always coming up with new and interesting innovations that are small changes to the day-to-day operation, but can reduce the risk of potential accident by percentage points, and in that space, it makes a serious difference.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what do you look at? Because the tech side is very different too. And when you're looking technologies around, say, the dry van space, moving into the bulk where there's maybe not as much available data, things like that. How does that change? How has that changed in the transition? Well,
really, we have always thought of ourselves as a little bit more of an old school industry. A lot of the business is done via handshake and a promise to one another. Really, with the surfacing of all the available data in recent years, we've tried to keep that old school mentality, but with a new school approach, a hard push to take in that data, because even if there isn't full-blown industry benchmarking, there's always things that we can find in our own data, and especially with the feedback of the great group of common carriers that we have, the broker partners, that help us refine that and make sure that we are leveraging those insights and using it to make more strategic partnerships, not just transactional.
What kind of data do you guys use that's different potentially than what you used to use or look at on the other side?
Well, it's a lot of the same data, but you have to invite in how much of it isn't accurate. You know, we might show empty miles, but when you're hauling a bulk load of hydrochloric acid and you have 1,000 gallons of heel left in that tank once you've made your delivery, you're not really coming back empty. You're coming back with with some serious commodity there. So it's not as easy to look into the data and say, hey, this is what you need to do different and do it immediately. And with 92 branches around the country, we have to have those strong relationships. We have to talk daily to operations, to the commercial team, to our carrier partners, and find out where those fits might lie, because it doesn't just jump out at you and say, hey, this is where you're making your mistake, the way you might be able to find in just general truckload data.
You talked about, or you mentioned it, the 92 branches across the country. Like, how challenging, or how do you approach managing a fleet, or the differences around like geography and things like that? Like, how do you make sure everybody's kind of on the same page when 92 branches is fairly spread out?
Yeah. Well, it takes a fairly nuanced approach. It's not going to be the same to manage a branch office in Anchorage, Alaska, with three tractors, as it is to manage 3 terminals in Southern California running 120. It takes strategic feedback, both up and down the supply chain, and it takes a holistic message and a focus on the long term, and that we're not trying to flip over the apple cart. We're trying to make nuanced changes, these small changes that allow us to buy better, to work better together, to deliver more value to our customers, our vendors, our carrier partners, so that we can find the inherent savings that every customer is trying to glean, but without having it come from beating your carrier over the head for 10 cents a mile back. It's not really the space that allows for that. But if we can help them, or they can help us improve our fuel consumption, drive an improved cost per mile, well, both of our costs just went down, and our end users, each and every one of you today is using one of our products in some way, shape, or form, whether you know it or not. Delivering that value back to that final customer is what it's all about.
Yeah, I used to look at the chemicals almost as a leading indicator in terms of like production and manufacturing. It's fascinating, but you kind of hit on this a little bit just now. But how well supplied or how available are carriers in the bulk space?
Oh, we still have a lot of trucks on the road.
Yeah, okay.
Don't get me wrong, especially when you count in the petrochemical, the oil, the gas, the diesel that is on the road every day. But that specific piece of equipment you need, that rubber-lined equipment with a rear offload, specifically that customer A might need, there might only be 5 guys within 500 miles that have that specific trailer at that specific time. So it's not something where we can just get on the DAT and make a few phone calls and find Johnny down the street and have him go grab this thing for us. So it's where those partnerships have to exist, and we have to not be afraid of very candid conversations with each other, saying, I have to charge you this because you're not using it often enough, but you need it to deliver it to the end customer. So you can't run away and be afraid of that difficult conversation. We have to work together because at the end of the day, that load is very important to that customer. And it's about bringing that suite of solutions through the synergy, through the partnership, through the collaboration.
I was going to say, how do you manage that? Because it's very different than the dry van space. Like, how do you manage it?
Retention is critical. You turn over somebody, whether that's in the dispatch office or even the driver, you're going to experience some heartache. You're going to experience some learning curves again, because you can't write down everything that everybody knows. It's why we tend to think pretty long term with our partners. We go in to our bid, and we'll invite new participants every year. But those people who've been with us a long time, there's so much value in the knowledge of their driver that I would love to take advantage of a price reduction, and we'll use a little bit of that knowledge gain to say, hey, we need to pull you back a little bit here, but we can give you a little bit more there because that's what the market's showing us. But you really can't afford to just flip over the apple cart. So you got to go in with a hell of a lot more of a long-term, forward-facing partnership.
Yeah, and the fact that your driver base largely has to be, certified, right? I mean, you're talking about chemicals,
Yep.
Like you said. You don't want to blow up a building. There's liability there. You can't just go out on the street and say, hey, here's somebody that can drive a truck and they can hop right in the cab, right?
Absolutely, and even more so, when you're hauling bulk chemical, there's surge or slosh from the moving forward with that material if it's not fully loaded. So it's pretty critical to drive a 13-speed or a 10-speed or a 12-speed. An automatic transmission driver isn't really going to cut it in the bulk space more often than not. It'll put them at risk of getting through an intersection because of the sheer force of that chemical coming back and stopping their acceleration. So you really got to have a different level of driver. You have to have the guys that are truly passionate about this, that love their customers, love their coworkers, love the company, and are willing to go that extra mile, because there aren't 10 of them lined up on the street. A lot of times we're even going to have to train them from the start, and we'll start with maybe a little bit more package, the palletized commodities that can go out in a dry van, but we want them to get up to speed on all of the suite of chemicals and what those differences are. And you'll be amazed. I mean, we've got drivers that are darn near chemists at this point with their ability to understand what reacts with what and what can't touch this or that. And I am so thankful for them that they help me every single day learn just how complicated it is to do what we do, and how important it is that we're making the proactive decision and not sitting on our hands waiting for the world to come to us, because you just can't afford it.
Yeah, do you find the driver training aspect of it to be more challenging, or do you feel like they're much more engaged in those conversations of like going through the training process versus I'm just going to get my CDL and drive general freight for anyone?
It's definitely a more challenging subject matter. So, you definitely need somebody that's engaged. Yeah. It's not as simple as learning how to pre-trip a trailer the way they would when they're getting their CDL. There's a lot more that goes into it. But with that challenge comes that engaged workforce, that guy who really wants to do something different. It's what attracted me to Univar, actually, and I think for a lot of them, it's what attracted them. They'd been hauling flatbed or they'd been hauling reefer. They wanted to spend more time with their families. Fortunately with chemicals, we try and bring our guys back to origin as often as possible, almost on a daily basis. So it's net advantageous there, but it's also learning this whole big, hairy animal of an industry and really accomplishing the last thing. My prior company, we would take a load to Alaska once a month. It was one of those things that we had a driver list 20 people long for that one load a month that we took to Alaska. It was that final frontier, that final thing to conquer. I've driven 48 states. I want to knock off 49. And I tell you, if we figured out how to truck on Hawaii, we probably would have figured it out there too. We don't have a presence in Hawaii today, but we do have a presence up in Alaska, and it's a critical piece of our business, and it's a heck of a unique solution. I'm constantly impressed by what they do out there in the field.
So in the dry van commodity market, typically there's easier and more challenging areas of the country to operate in, and the Northwest tends to be an area that drivers don't go into very much. Florida, of course, because there's not enough freight. What is your most challenging area of the country to deal with?
So it's a very difficult thing to answer. I mean, we're hauling freight for ourselves, so it's not are you going to get out of there or not? It's more of what elemental conditions are you going to deal with, and what specific commodities are you dealing with?
Right.
So something that's a very corrosive, like a hydrochloric acid, a bleach, or a sulfuric, tends to be a bit more challenging, and the things that can react with one another is where the process really has to get refined, because you put the wrong commodity in the wrong tank, you see catastrophe happen, and we have to learn from our peers when we see it happening. Fortunately, we've got a pretty strong track record there. We do something called a safety share, part of our Serious About Safety campaign, where any meeting with 2 or more individuals, internal or external, we're going to start that meeting off with just a general best practice, whether that's about operating in a warehouse or driving your car, teaching your kids to drive. The topics can range from very serious to a little bit more funny and topical, but it reinforces every day just how serious it is to understand the nuance that comes with this and how serious the consequences can be. I mean, drivers, if you look at it as like a fatality rate, is a more dangerous industry than I believe police officers, firefighters, the military, almost combined. It's a crazy statistic. And that's the general populace of drivers. Now add in the complexity of putting a hazardous chemical behind you, sometimes that's flammable or even explosive. You got to take your job very, very seriously. And these guys understand the consequences, and that's why they lead the charge from the field with new and innovative concepts that they've picked up at a previous employer, at a new vendor, or they just thought of themselves. And they're just an invaluable resource to our business, and one thing that we believe is a huge competitive advantage is managing the large private fleet that we do.
So Zach was a pricing guy. I've got a question. How much different is it from that perspective? Because I was not a pricing guy, and I just know there's so many more nuances, right, that come with it. I mean, like, does that become a challenge? I know you're moving chemicals for yourself. You've also got other customers and things like that. I mean, like, does the pricing element vary as much as it feels like it should in this case?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta envision a world where you're mostly round tripping equipment.
Yeah.
Rarely are you going to be able to reload something immediately after, unless you're moving the same exact chemistries. And if so, why would somebody pay you to move bleach from Louisiana to Texas and then pay you from Texas to Louisiana to also return with bleach? You buy more locally. It is still a commodity in that sense. So you're dealing with more of this round trip pricing or more full day rates and things like that. So certainly more, but it's more about how do we help them control their costs? How do we drive increased utilization? Where does it make sense to invest in more trailing assets so that they can keep that driver moving, or that tractor moving at least around the clock? And where can we do the same thing? And how can we challenge our customers with those sorts of approaches to say, hey, you're looking to decrease your cost per pound by 2 cents a pound, and we can absolutely do that for you. But you got to help us with this. Can we deliver post 4 p.m. And not only do we want to do that, but we want to make sure it's safe. So we'd need you to install some lighting, to install a key-coded gate or whatever the case might be, and we might share in that expense with them. One thing that we push on pretty hard is getting telemetry into the tank to tell us where is the tank level for those consistent customers, so that we can call them before they even call us and say, hey, if your 10,000 gallon tank's below 1,000 gallons. I got a guy coming through there right now. It's got 4,000 gallons of heel. Can we stop in there and fill you up? Saves you cost, saves you time, and when you're that sticky, when you're able to provide that kind of solution, it's pretty hard to disrupt, and allows us to further that relationship.
So one of the biggest questions that I get asked most frequently is forecasting. And I mentioned that chemicals are pretty far upstream in the whole economic process. Is there anything that you look at that helps you get, or gives you some sort of sense of leading indicator for your space?
General manufacturing is always a good sign. Inclement weather events, it'll disrupt a lot of things in the supply chain, but consider that a lot of the chemicals that we actually deliver are really delivered to bring water level to an appropriate pH. So when you have a catastrophic accident and the water table gets impacted, they need to clean that either with an acid or a base to produce a zero, so that you're not drinking something hazardous to you. So those can be some of the indicators. I think all of us would love to have a little bit better vision
crystal
to
ball.
it. Yeah, it would be lovely. And if you guys have a crystal ball room around here, you're gonna have to show that to me after this. But all we can do is live with the information that we have, and historical trends still puts us pretty close. I'd be lying if I didn't say that we weren't inside of 5% of forecast at any given time, because we've got very sharp minds using the data to try and tell us where to go. But if we can get that little bit better, it becomes that large competitive advantage.
You talked about inclement weather, brought it up a couple times, and kind of dive into like what are there's challenges that come across the supply chain with that. Like, what are the specifics or like the nuances that come with moving bulk into these areas?
Well, again, when you're dealing with these dangerous commodities, these guys are going to be a whole lot more rigid about gambling. I sold plenty of dry van freight into hurricane markets in my time with Coyote. And I remember working around the clock and crushing Monster with the boys and making some phone calls.
See, that's what I envision, right?
Right.
There's some serious cowboys that'll drive a dry van full of water, and thank God for them. Yeah. We can't quite run those kinds of risks. Yeah. You spill a load of bleach in there that's intended to clean the water. It's going to have a counter effect in that very close area versus a safe deployment. So we got to be a little bit more strategic than that. But at the end of the day, it's just like anything else. You want to be smart. You want to be safe. You want to not take undue risk, but you also know how important those chemicals are to getting life back to normal. So we can't be afraid of it. We just have to know through our safety procedures, through our standard processes, and through these very seasoned drivers' perspectives, what can or cannot be done, and let them know, hey, run the safe side every time. If you start to find yourself in a moment where you're saying, hey, maybe I shouldn't be here, we're going to pull over and we're going to make sure we get that guy out of there.
Yeah, so you mentioned these natural disasters, and of course, I used to be in the expedited freight game as well. The hurricane rooms, super fun times. But yeah, very intense experiences. Do you have any concerns? I mean, we're specifically forecasted to have one of the worst hurricane seasons on record. Mm-hmm. Craig Voller, our CEO, wrote an article entirely about this thing, and I'm kind of a weather nerd myself. Do you guys have any concerns? And of course, Kaylee Nix is our resident meteorologist. Fun fact that some people may not know. So do you have any concerns about the upcoming hurricane season? Does that impact your business at all?
I mean, we have concern, but you can't prepare any more than you already have. We're constantly prepared for the worst. We're constantly striving for that perfect safety record. We don't know where the hurricane's going to get hit. We don't know when it's going to hit. So we can't be overly concerned. We just got to invest in constantly doing the right thing and bringing the safest approach and the safest perspective to everybody, so that when the task is presented, we know how to execute it. And our team of experts, we aren't afraid of anything. We know that through working together, both ourselves and our partner carriers, we'll find a way to get the things that are needed where they're needed.
Did his mic go off?
Oh,
hey, there we go.
We're back.
No,
maybe
not. Maybe not. Frazier, we need a hot mic.
Hot mic. But I think it's interesting. I think the bulk space is so, it's different. I mean, we talk about it every week, right? The dry van freight and the reefer markets and whatnot. But the insights are so much more interesting because it does go into everything. I mean, we have water bottles right here that are made of plastic. Like, it started as a chemical at some point, process, right? Yeah. So it's when you kind of talk about like what excites you, say, the next 5 to 10 years in the space, like.
I think that there's a lot of momentum right now to further leverage data, and I think it's something that the bulk space really hasn't had in the past, but they deserve it. They're people that are readily available and have an appetite to ingest and analyze their business and look for ways to improve it. So I think there's a lot of good things to come there. AI and automation, I think, is going to make a lot of the predictive natures of the business more effective. And that's what we want. We want to be able to deliver the best possible product at the lowest possible cost to our customers because, ultimately the things that we produce keep our communities healthy, clean, fed, and safe. Those are pretty important things, and we want to be able to do it at a low economic cost so it can get to everybody.
Yeah, so, we're talking about the next couple of years. What do you see, we've been talking about a market turn in the dry van commodity market. Does that influence you at all in your space?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably 66% liquid bulk hazmat, but we also have some truckload. We also have a significant portion of LTL, some of those packaged commodities that we get out there. So we'll have some experience there, and ultimately, they say a rising tide lifts all boats. The hotter that the truckload market is, the harder it is to recruit drivers or to retain drivers. And we spoke earlier, it's incredibly critical to our business to have these smart drivers staying with us for the long term. So those market forces will put pressure on us. It's about making sure we're delivering them the best possible package for themselves and their families, so that we can keep them with us for the long term, so that we can continue to grow and evolve our processes and deliver that safe product.
Right on. Well, we got less than a minute left. Is there anything, as we wrap up, and thank you so much, and thank you Lean Solutions for sponsoring us today. Is there anything that you want to leave us with in the last, say, 40 seconds that we have here that you may not have talked about or gotten to, or talk about Univar Solutions?
Yeah, I mean, Univar's been doing a lot of great things. I think we're incredibly proud. Last year, we were considered a shipper of choice. We're back here this year hoping to hear the same, because we put a lot of good faith effort into really collaborating with everybody. I think we're unique in that our customer may also be our supplier. Our vendor may also be our customer of ours, thinking the cleaning products. The collaboration is critical, and we just hope that we can continue to demonstrate value to those people, so that we can continue to grow.
Well, thank you so much, Dustin, and thank you so much for watching.
Thanks.